Catherine McKenna. I'm the former Minister of Environment and Climate Change and Infrastructure, now CEO of Climate and Nature Solutions, and I'm the chair of the UN Secretary General's expert group on net zero.
Catherine, you've been out of office now for a couple of years, and I'm just wondering, in terms of as you look back to when you were a cabinet minister, and it was very out there how much you were being attacked and online as well, how do you look back on that time?
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny now looking back because it's 3 years ago, and I think I kind of had PTSD because I just tuned it out. I was trying to do a job. We had to get a climate plan. We had to protect nature with Indigenous peoples. We had to get a new Impact Assessment Act. So every day I was just trying to do my job. And so a lot of times, I mean, I knew it was bad, and especially when the hate went offline, which then becomes, a security threat to me and my family and my staff. But looking back now, I mean, I just think how bonkers it was. But it was really kind of the start of what we see now, which is way worse. When I was there, I mean, it was funny because I love social media. I had run a charity and I used it to get my message out. I ran a 2-year campaign to get elected. I literally needed social media because it was hard to get, earned media. And then suddenly the hate started pretty soon after I became Minister of Environment and Climate Change. And the one thing I think that was good. I did wait a long time before doing it, but I called it out at one point. Now, it's kind of quaint. I was called Climate Barbie, although it wasn't all that quaint. If you looked at the tweets, they often, had like violent acts where they would crush a Barbie. But, everyone kind of thinks of Barbie now. They've seen the Barbie movie. But it was pretty brutal from the start, but I ignored it. My team was said, like, do not do anything with this. You will look weak. You'll get drawn in. And then one day I was at the United Nations. We were talking with world leaders about climate policy. And I noticed that Jerry Ritz, who was a colleague, a conservative in the House of Commons, had tweeted something about, something stupid, how stupid I was in Climate Barbie. And I just said to my team, I was like, okay, folks, like I'm saying something back. And I did a lot of my tweets. So I just did a tweet. Now, I'm a lawyer, so I'm careful. So I just said, like, look, would you use that kind of language with your mother, sister, girlfriends? Don't try to chase a woman out of politics by doing things like this, something like that. And actually, it was interesting because the outpouring was great. Like, Canadians were like, no, we don't stand for that. I really worry now. Like, when I look back, it was definitely bad. It sucked sometimes, to be perfectly honest. Luckily, I had good friends here in Ottawa, my book club. I just call them up. If I started feeling down, I just call them up and they'd come over for a glass of wine and some potato chips. And I would just realize I'm just a normal person doing a job. I think Donald Trump certainly, increased this idea that it's okay to say whatever you want, to go on personal attacks, like policy, fine. And by the way, my grandfather fought for Irish independence. I'm from Hamilton and I'm a competitive swimmer. I can take it. A policy, big policy debates, but personal attacks are beyond the pale and they happen far too often now. And I think for women in particular or minorities, but anyone who is subject to them, it can be really challenging. And I just worry, I meet regular people now and they're like, why would I ever go into politics? And I said, no, that's the wrong lesson. We actually need more good people who recognize this as unacceptable behavior. But I think it's time to take action. And I've said this, I've been very vocal about some of the measures that need to be done. I think, first of all, social media companies need to be held accountable. Like the online harms bill, I think sometimes government gets caught up in being worried that it looks like they're controlling speech or it's something to do with freedom of speech. Hate speech is not freedom of speech. It's just not a thing. In fact, I got caught up in this. I mean, there's so many bizarre things that happened while I was in office. But Rebel Media, I had blocked one of their people who was constantly attacking me. And I don't even actually remember it. Generally, I blocked people. So if anything happened to me, I had told my team to tell the RCMP to go see everyone who had blocked me, because then that would be a sign of who may have taken action against me. That's pretty dark, but I don't know, what am I supposed to do? There was just such a volume of hate. And so we got to take action against social media companies. I really think there needs to be a code of conduct for members of parliament. It can be signed independently because I know these things are very hard to negotiate with parties. But I remember having a conversation with, I think, Elizabeth May, Greg Fergus when he was a member of Parliament, the Bloc leader, I mean, someone, I'm sure, from the NDP. Everyone was willing to look at this. And if you don't sign it, that's a sign. If you won't sign if you won't sign a code of ethics saying that you will not do personal attacks or lie or mislead, I think we got, it's kind of an indication of what kind of person you are in politics. So I think that is, that's another example. And then I think we unfortunately need to ramp up the protection we give to politicians. We've seen incidents in other places. Joe Cox was killed in the UK, Gabby Giffords in the US. But I do think there's many examples of how this hateful conduct that's online goes offline. I mean, I had the C word written in my office, but I had many, many other worrying incidents. People coming to my office looking for me, screaming abuses. I was actually most worried for my family. There's not great protection, to be perfectly honest. I think it's ramped up a bit, but there was always this, whose jurisdiction is it? I was like, I don't care, I'm one person. You're responsible for my safety. It's not whether I'm in Parliament or at home or I'm traveling for work. I'm just like that. I'm one person, and the only reason I'm getting targeted is literally because of my job. So I think there's a number of measures, but the number one measure has to be politicians need to actually act like responsible adults. We need to actually treat politics like a normal job, where you have to, there are ways, acceptable ways of behaving.
Was there ever a time when it was really awful that you just think, why am I doing this? It's not worth it for my own mental health, for my family.
I mean, I think the worst case was when it was after the 2019 election, which was a very tough election. Carbon pricing was definitely an issue, by the way. Canadian supported parties that had a price on pollution. But after that, someone, I can't remember, it's all so blurry, but someone came to my office, my constituency office in downtown Ottawa. You want young staff member, women, open the door, and he started hurling abuses. Now, I didn't even know this happened because I was on vacation with my family at my hometown of Hamilton. And I think on Sunday night, somehow I was on Twitter and I saw Glenn McGregor, a journalist, had retweeted a video that this guy had posted. Because of course now everyone they hurl abuses at you and then they take video and then they post it. And I could not believe it. I was horrified that, that my staff member had to put up with this. Yeah, I mean, I think it gave me pause. And I also said, like, what is going on here that we're all just like, an MP, I mean, I'm a minister, have not, we don't have protocols in place to even make sure that we're safe, because everyone was kind of like, well, it's in your house, so I don't think we're responsible for it, and it's not like we're not. I was like, okay, everyone. So we had the conversation, and I was furious. And then I think people started to take it more seriously. Yes, then I had security. And by the way, it's not very fun having 24-hour security, if you really want to know. But I felt better because I'm alone in my house with my kids.
You spoke earlier about a code of conduct for the House of Commons, but the harassment that we're seeing for politicians and people that want to run for office is at all levels. It's municipal, it's provincial, it's federal. So how do we, and this is a bit loaded, but what is the responsibility of leaders in politics when it comes to trying to set a tone and to reduce the level of online abuse that people are experiencing?
Well, look, ultimately, I mean, you can regulate all you want. You can try to do a bunch of things, make social media companies, be transparent about their algorithms. You can do like a bunch of things, provide more security, but ultimately it's up to political leaders. They should take a stance and be very vocal about how it's unacceptable. But when you do that, you need to be held accountable yourself and for your caucus. It can't just be you say something, and we see it on all sides. In my case, I will tell you, it is like 99% conservative politicians, and I'm not even saying all of them. I have a lot of friends that are conservative politicians. I will say it is a minority of conservative politicians, but they happen to be very vocal, and now with social media, they get clipped, and then it goes all over. But yeah, I mean, leaders need to say this is not okay, but they have to model that behavior. You can't say that attacks aren't okay, and then you're leading the charge on the attacks. But I do think like we gotta all have a wake-up call every once in a while about what is okay and what's not okay, because ultimately the most important thing is people, and that people say we don't want this, we don't accept this, we don't think this is okay. And I also think numbers. So I will always push to have more women in politics and more diversity, and I realize it's hard. But I will be there because I think it will change if we get better people in who recognize that this is not the way you behave. Sure, have vigorous debates. That's why we have a party system federally, but do it in a respectful way.